Welcome to Production and Operations Management Society, or POMS India Chapter's Industry Academia Panel Discussion on Challenges in Operations Management in Digital Era. This panel discussion attempts to discuss two agendas on the theme of challenges in operations management in the digital era. First, to uncover specific focal areas for future studies by the management researcher community, and also explore specific areas of industry collaboration to enhance the quality of applied research. And two, to identify the potential scope of improvements in the curriculum for graduate and undergraduate students taking production and operations management courses in the digital era, and also recognize the areas of collaboration with industry to develop the industry-ready students. The insights received from the focused discussion within the expert panel of academia and industry would guide POMS India to facilitate in designing the faculty development programs to build on necessary skills and resources to develop faculty and research scholars toward industry-inspired research, as well as develop course material.
So with that, I just give it back to you, Dr. Pati. I think we will continue the discussion. I have a couple of other examples from where I feel there is certainly something which we can do together to solve this puzzle. It is in the interest of everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Ajit. It was really an interesting insight, especially the alignment of industry students and faculties, all three sides of the coin, which really influences. Now I'll get back to Mr. Bawa. Having a very rich experience of 50 plus years at various levels, from strategy decision making at the top to the across multiple verticals. So that is why I thought I should have Bhawa's response at the end, so that he can give us a bigger picture also. Thank you, sir. Over to you, sir.
See, if we really look into the industry and the academia interaction, then there is a big trust deficiency. If I look at the quality of the MBAs which are available for employment at this moment of time, then leaving some few colleges which are of great reputation, if we leave them away, then approximately only, or let me put it this way, 80% of the MBAs are not employable by the industry. They have somehow managed the MBA degree, and this MBA degree, I mean, why is that trust deficit in the people who are coming out as MBA is the basic fact that many colleges are recruiting the people based on merit, and many of them are recruiting based on their capability to provide the means for getting those education. So merit-based colleges are still in a position to deliver good quality material for employment in the industry, and industry will have trust on them. Otherwise, most of the people, they are somehow, the glorified BComs, glorified BScs, glorified engineers, not exactly fitting into the role of, or any such role where they can fit into the industry straight away. There is, at this moment of time itself, if we really look into the industry, we are passing through a phase which is VUCA: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So in this particular stage, when we are providing, for us to get trained or trainable resources, what industry is looking out for? Nobody can train exactly a person which will fit into the industry when he clears his interview. We are looking out for a person who has the common sense and analytical background or analytical capabilities, ready to grasp, and very nice interactive skills. And once we find that he is there, rest of the things we are in a position to teach. There cannot be any college which will be in a position to render people ready for use for the industry. And the only at this moment of time, the requirement is for the switch over from the existing situation to this where we can help is that we are looking out for digital technology or data sciences. In addition, there is a need for synthesizing operation for technical syllabus. If you really look into the operations people, they are the last one to get the job. Finance people, IT people, the people coming from marketing, they are the first one. And that is the reason for minimum number of people are going for operations. If I go into a college, number of people who are in marketing, 20, 25, 30. In HR, 40. In finance, maybe another 30. And what about operations? Only 3 or 4. It has not remained a very lucrative profession to follow. And maybe because the industry thinks that the type of training which we provide is of very basic nature. So there is a need for integration of these two. Means there is people who are from operations, there are some from technology. Operations people exist on their own, technologists exist on their own. So there has to be a combined syllabus which will teach these people and make them more industry ready. At this moment of time, this is what is missing. And with the virtual studies which are going on, the competence level and also the checking the competence level of these and making compromises, cutting corners is created further doubt in the minds of the industry whether we are churning out the right quality of people which can get into the industry straight away. So this is, I thought, will be my view in this VUCA situation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Now, I would go back to the academics community represented by Professor Siddharth, Professor Niranjan, and Professor Prashant. Now, basically, you can get an idea about some of the perspectives which has been put forward by the industry. And can you just let us know about your views on what are the pain points when we are trying to interact with the industry for various kinds of support systems? Can you just give us your point of view? Maybe we'll start with Professor Prashant.
Hi, thank you, Rupesh. First of all, thank you for inviting me and making me a part of this elite panel. And I think these kind of instances, so the answer lies here, these kind of instances where we have interaction between academia and industry are very vital, especially to fill the bridge, to bridge the gap between the two. Okay. So as Mr. Ajit and Mr. Deepak have been saying, and which was also emphasized by Mr. Bawa, what we find is, I mean, always we keep hearing it, and we among ourselves, like among academicians, we want to improve our courses, make it closer to industry and so on. But yes, they have a point when they say that when the research is well alienated from practice, right? Because that's how we are, right? We look at very abstraction of the real world scenarios and then try to solve it, giving it theoretical rigor. But at the same time, when it comes to practice, there are a lot of loose ends that have to be tied, and there are a lot of nitty-gritties that have to be looked into. Okay, and that is only known by interacting with industry experts. Okay, so of course, I do understand that being an academician, say I would personally prefer to give problems that are large and very close to industry, say for in the exam, right? But people think that, oh, okay, I mean, this is not just a formula based problem. I mean, it's not just apply a formula and get the answer. And I tell my students, of course, life is not like that. Once you go to industry, you may apply a little slot, you may apply some inventory equation and then get the answer. And I always tell them that it's not about marks that you gain, it's about the perspective that you gain during the course. Other than that, like what is the new thing that you are learning compared to the earlier degree to post MBA? What are the 2 years for, right? And having said that, the other thing that I would like to emphasize is getting known by industry. So, for example, I'm a part of this colloquium today, and it's a good opportunity that I know so many people, about 40 people today, out of which a good decent number of industry experts, and even they know me now, right? So the ice has been broken, and if at all, I mean, if someone feels that, as someone has rightly pointed out, I think Mr. Deepak, he says industry doesn't know what research is, but industry can't say, okay, you do this XYZ research to a faculty, because that's not their cup of tea. But they are there to operate in the market. By industry, what I mean is it's not just profit-making industry. It could be a non-profit organization as well. It could be governmental as well. It could be an NGO. Anything that's operating in the society and giving services or goods to the citizens or the stakeholders in the society is an industry in itself. That way, academia also could be an industry at a large level. But when we talk about getting closer to the industry, I think there should be more emphasis on project-based, experience-based learning, where the students form liaison between the industry as well as the faculty, while the industry just aids the problem. So whenever I tell a student, go and talk to particular industry expert, I make it a point to tell them, saying that don't talk anything technical or academic, just ask them a simple question: what is the problem that you are facing, or what are the problems that you are facing? Rank order them, just listen to them, just give them the ear, let them tell the problems, and then you get the set of problems, and then it is our responsibility as a student, who may be a future consultant, who may be a future analyst, or whatever job, right, and academician, to decide how to solve the problem, right? What is the problem comes from the industry, how to solve the problem comes from the academics. That's a good. And I mean, always we say, oh, okay, academicians, we say we are not getting problems from the industry. Industry says you are not producing equal, good, competent output, so that we can recruit them. So then this is a chicken and egg problem forever. The only way to solve a chicken and egg problem is in a symbiotic manner. Go together, right? Just, and this is one way of going together. Get the problem from the industry, use your academic expertise, knowledge, consult your professors, get the techniques to solve it, get back to the industry experts again, saying that, oh, you know what, this is what we solved, this is what we found. Then they say, oh, I mean, it's good, but you know what, this is what you have missed. And then again, you incorporate it, and that's how the problem gets richer. So project based, especially in electives, it's not in the core. Project based assessments and project based components, I especially like them. And as a professor, I learn a lot from them as well, right? Rather than churning out what I have been knowing throughout, just get a new industry problem every year. I mean, there are 10 groups in the class, 10 new problems every year. And of course, you develop so much learning that even academicians will be able to better guide the later batches, because they have learned so much. They would have seen similar industrial problems in the past, right? So that is one good way, I think. And when someone has, I think Mr. Deepak has again said, I mean, there's a good gap in the mode of in the methodology and the mode of instruction between like US or Western or other universities abroad versus Indian universities. I first-hand information, I can vouch for it, saying that one major difference is your homeworks and project-based assignments. They take you closer to practice. They say after 2 years, go and do an internship. And no matter you are a PhD student, that's okay. They encourage you to go and do internship. Then if you ask a question saying that, why should I do an internship? I'm going to opt for an academic job and not an industrial job. Then the only statement that the guide or the research guide or professor says is you'll get the perspective. So it's the perspective that matters. Okay, yeah, that's where I stop. Of course, we are going to revisit, and I'm not going to gobble the entire time. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Prashant. Over to Mr. Niranjan. Your views on it?
Good evening, everyone. It's a privilege to share my thoughts with you. But let me admit that I'm not an expert on this topic. So as I saw, my role here is to, there's a wealth of about 100 years of industry experience. So my role as a faculty member of IIT Bombay is to, really truly understand what the problem is, how we can alter the existing curriculum. To which I have a couple of rejoinders to the comments made by the industry experts. Starting with Mr. Deepak, who said there are numerous problems that the industry wants to be solved. So before we kind of evaluate this statement, what I'm particularly interested is, like I've been in academia for the last 15 odd years as a doctoral student and then as a postdoc and now a faculty member since close to a decade. What has changed that requires us to change our curriculum? So if you talk about any, most of the business case studies that we teach, starting with the classic Harvard Business School case studies, and lately IMB is producing a couple of fantastic case studies, which I use in my class. When I hear terms like digital era and VUCA, because of which, we need to change, what is more digital today than it was in 2007 when I was a doctoral student? ML has come, but those days people were talking about data science. Data analytics was a big buzzword. So today it's kind of replaced by ML and AI. Okay, the current kids are very fluent with this terminology. When you say VUCA, is the current business more VUCA than it was 50 years back? When the Spanish flu happened, presumably there was a lot of uncertainty and volatility, the great world wars and the great famines. I think we've been through so many things. So my bottom line here is for me to really understand how and where I need to, because when I teach or when I sit through classes of some of the top professors in our executive MBA, I see about 80% of their case studies are classics, 30, 40-year-old classics. Incidentally, Prashant, I sat through Professor Mahadevan's class recently, also there. So the core is there. It is just that the last 20% of the thing has to be customized to contemporary world, which the students are very adept at. They know how to put the icing. The cake remains more or less the same. So I just want the industry people to, after I finish in about 5 minutes, maybe you can just think and give us more pointers. In what ways can we shape our students better? In what ways can we change our curriculum better? Connected point is what Mr. Ajit said, that none of my 50 projects were relevant when I went to the industry. So I suppose he means the MBA projects. I would like Prashant, I would completely agree when it comes to PhD research, academic research. We've been experiencing it. I completely admit there is a lot of disconnect because the incentives are different. We want to publish in journals and industry wants tomorrow's problem to be solved. So obviously there is a disconnect. We need to solve that. But when it comes to MBA projects, I would not buy these numbers in contemporary context, business school context, because most of the courses, I will not speak about my course, but the courses that my other colleagues teach in marketing and finance and operations, they're extremely industry relevant. More than half of it or almost all of them, because the students also want that. They say, so my concern is the current students, they're not really interested in the core deep academic concepts. Only 10% are interested. The rest of them want something immediately translatable, which is good. So in fact, from my academic lens, I see the problem in the other way. They don't want to go deep. They want to do a project that they can talk to a fellow manager or a B school graduate immediately. So again, a couple of qualifiers. When Mr. Baba said, 80% of our MBAs are not employable, I don't have first-hand experience of any other business school. I've only taught in IIT Bombay. Prior to that, I was in the defense services. So my perspective is a bit narrow. How I see the current crop of MBAs graduating, they are extremely smart. When I interview them, I feel very insecure to reject a candidate because when I was at their age 20 years back, I was nowhere near as savvy as them. when you talk about the digital era, the new aspects that have crept into digital era, they are as fluent or perhaps more fluent in these terms and stuff than I am. So in fact, my anxiety always is, how do I add value? So I have the bread and butter, the core concepts. I try my best to make it more relatable to the younger audience. And then when you said most people don't join operations, again, I have a completely different experience. In our business school, and NITI, I don't know about a lot of other business schools, 60, 70, 80% end up in operations roles. And operations is the most, finance and operations are the most subscribed courses. Sometimes we have to run electives in 2 batches. So again, there are qualifiers. And lastly, what Mr. Ajit said is true and admitted, right? Can the objectives align? There are 3 stakeholders here: the B school grads, the faculty members, and the industry. And we should make the industry competitive. That's what the Prime Minister wants. That's good to say, but that's not going to happen because we all have different KRAs, different incentives. I'll not be rated the best professor if I try to solve tomorrow's problem, and one cannot be good at all these things. Students, they join business schools for placements. They do what is required to get placed. And the industry, I've collaborated. My share of collaboration has happened. I was fortunate when I did my doctorate. We had a parallel cohort of executive fellow programs. So there was a lot of synergy between them, through which I got access to a company to do a in-depth case study. So I'm kind of the middle guy, nor completely industry relevant, nor completely detached from industry. I'm fortunate. But end of the day, when it comes to academic research, there's going to be, we have to live with this problem. So we cannot wish that our incentives, our objectives will align. So if we have to make any changes in the curriculum to do something concrete, we have to admit that the objectives are different. Maybe we have to build more on what Professor Chintapalli said, that sending doctoral students to internship. No, it's a 2-way street. I sometimes feel surprised that industry is sitting on a minefield of, every business school has 300, 400 of the smartest kids that you can find in the country. They're willing to do the work for free, apart from the internship where, they're paid. The rest of the time, they're always looking for problems to solve. Why doesn't the industry also take one step and, get them? Because these kids we're talking about the top 1%, 2%, at least from the B schools that are represented here. We cannot sit here as IIT, IMB profs and solve the problem of the country, because that's a different market we need to acknowledge. But this market is also fairly large. We are talking about 20,000-30,000 business school graduates graduating from the IITs and IIMs alone. So with these thoughts, my more specific takeaway that I'm sure other faculty members in the panel will be in the digital era, what has changed? How can we change? So with these, I think I've also had my fair share of time. Maybe over to Paddy.
Thank you, Professor Niranjan. Now I will hand it over to Professor Siddharth.
For inviting me to this panel discussion. I have a little different view. Why? Because in this digital era, what are the changes that happened that leads to disconnection between industry and academia? Suppose we say 1970 when people started supplier selection, 1970s. It's a very old concept, 1970. Then obviously over a period of time when 2010 came and then people talked about Industry 4.0 in the German setup, they say start Industry 4.0. Obviously machine learning and RFID, barcode, or you say real-time evaluation system, then punch cards, smart bowls. These are all being integrated into the system for over a period of time. Now, what is that is hindering to make a synergy between these two parts of the coin or two sides of the coin? The first thing. So when we teach in a class, generally there are 3 things generally we consider. First is the textbook, which is 30 years old concepts, right? So to compile a textbook, you need literature, and the literature is always 30 years old. Like for example, if you say SWOT analysis, the first class people comes with a SWOT analysis. But SWOT analysis is not new. Then people say, no, let's go for business canvas model, because it is very difficult to pinpoint the four things, or it is very difficult to pinpoint the specific aspects. So rather than, let's go for a more elaborative view of a business canvas model. That's fine. But how many times it is for a researcher of a B school, or like, at Silas Jameta, IIT Bombay, Bangalore, or Quilcor, or any of the schools, how many times will you be able to publish a paper with this? It's absolutely no. So then, what is the problem then? So as a researcher, we always think 20 years or 30 years beyond the line, because your IoT is developed in Stanford by ETH in 1976. But now industry is starting using IoT, AI, which is 1976 concept. So 30 years before, we have thought of that, let's do in this way. Now, what we are doing now? Now we are doing, for example, behavioral operation. So how a consumer will behave under different situation. Why? Because there is an uncertainty, like VUCA. There is an uncertainty, there is a volatility in the market. And in the digital era, when we say that during the pandemic time, how differently people behave. Then we thought of two things: digital economy, like when people migrated from then Bitcoins, then people say blockchain. So obviously, when this same thing we apply to industrial context, industry people are somewhere aligned with us, because they have also started using blockchain. They have started using AI, machine learning. This is already there. So now, what extra we would like to provide, and who is going to take it? Who are the takers? Now let's consider about the stakeholders, our graduate students, PGP students. So first is textbook, which is 30 years old. Then we substantiate with some cases. Now, as Professor Nilanjan and Professor Prashant mentioned, maybe there's a cake which is very standard, but some icing on the top. And then we say, oh, look, how you like to see this industry? Suppose I consider industry Tata Motors, and suppose I'm carrying a case, and which is written in 2010. So then I say, okay, let's go to Tata Motors website and tell me what is going to be the situation over the next 5 years. Then hardly people are interested to do that. If you have not an internship in that company, or you are not targeting for that company, like Mr. Baba mentioned, like if you are not interested in operation, why are you going to dig into those websites to search for that? That's a attitude or interest problem. Now, what we are providing a base, which is 30 years old, then cases, some are contemporary and some are basic classicals. But again, as a professor, what we can say, you go and see the website and tell me what exactly this. So, and that is where the full stop. That is what is your graduate student. Then it comes to your research. Now in research, we have a very specific problem and we generally deep dive into it. Suppose I am doing a research on consumer perception. Then obviously my whole focus will be on consumer perception. But when I teach facility location layout problem, but it is very difficult to publish a paper in facility location layout. Unless otherwise I am doing something which is completely like how robots would like to use facility location layout to optimize their the travel time, which is a paper by Devjit Roy of IIM Ahmedabad. So now under that condition, what will do? I'll take the help of industry. Can you give me a blueprint of your facility location layout? Then obviously if I get it, then I'll say, are you using robots? I said, no, we are not using. Like even Amazon doesn't use robots for stacking problem, for inventory management, for keeping all your inventory. Then that's called imagination. Then we think of, if it is a robot which is of having this size and shape, how much time it can use. Then obviously if you have nothing, you go for a simulation. And we simulate that. And then we say, if at all industry is going to use these robots for facility location under a facility location or under a layout, suppose in-plant layout, how he is going to optimize his efficiency. And that is where the mismatch. Either as a researcher, we are thinking 20 or 15, 30 years, or maybe, let's forget 20, 30, suppose 5 to 10 years. Now, I'll give you another example of very famous researcher, Luc Van Nussen. Luc, let's say, is in INSEAD. He said that sustainable development goals. He said no takers. When he initially thought of this concept called sustainability, like circular economy in specific, he said none of the industry people are interested. Then he said, why? Because we are not getting money. Because what is the objective of a firm? Is to earn money. If something which is not giving them money, then that is of no interest. Then slowly, this industry start gaining momentum. Why and how? Now, once you use, reuse, remanufacture, then recollect your products from the market, that's called circular economy, right? And then there is a value in it. And suddenly, Atasu and their group, they started coming up with those ideas, like in INSEAD. So INSEAD is known as one of the top schools in Europe. So considering this, for a digital or challenges of operations management in digital era, obviously we have issues with industries because there is a mismatch or there is a lead and lag. Suppose industry is using something good, like they are using suppose R or Python, we are not using it. Then we say that no, we are using MATLAB. They say no, MATLAB we don't use. So that's called the problem with your solving a problem. So considering this, my question to all of you is that can we have a underlying principle, like what are the challenges? For example, use of tracking devices in this new era. What kind of support you want from industry? Like drone based, suppose it's a RFID based tracking device, or like Flipkart, Amazon. So they have a tracking device that the people would like to know where is their products. And secondly, what what I have observed in an inventory, generally it is very standard problem. How we use the demand into ordering cost by holding cost, then we take a route over. Right, that's a very simple understanding of your economic order quantity, which is very basic. Now the fundamental is in digital era, ordering cost is almost nil. But getting the product is difficult because that is where you are not connected with your customer or with your supplier from face to face. There's a digital transaction is happening. So you place the order, but you will not receive it. Or you order very frequently because it is easy. Then you end up with pipeline inventory. Do you have that kind of problem? Like buyer-supplier relationship. How you manage relationship? Can you teach us that, look, we have a...
You can wind up your exact point so that we can move to the next agenda.
So that is where my final conclusion is, we just want to know, I really appreciate and acknowledge, yes, there is a gap between industry and academics. But how we can help you out? Can you give us some specific points, like from buyer-supplier relationship, from purchasing cycle, from specific problems, so that we can understand your problem? Because we also try to get some problem from your side so that we can really address them in our, not only in the course, but also in research. With this, I'll conclude. Thank you so much. I will interact.
So I've noted down, I'll come back to the cross interaction once again. I'll just take the discussion forward to the next aspect of it. Of course, some of these things have already been talked about in the previous interactions, so by various panelists as such. So the next part is we have tried to understand as of now what industry would love to have it from the researcher's perspective and what research community would love to have it from the industry perspective. So if I put up a nutshell, then your industry was of a view that I have only problems with me if the research community can come up and identify this is the part of the issue which they can take it forward for research, doing a research side, then it would solve their problem. And in such a scenario, maybe they might be willing to finance. I think Mr. Ajit had pointed it out. So on the other hand, there were some concerns which was raised on by the academicians, which is primarily saying, looking at the aspects of, I'm also giving it from my inputs here itself, representing the academic community, that if we send it to a student to the industry that identify the problem, they'll give the problem. Now, once I get the problem, they want to work on one of the issues, but then I develop my model, I develop whatever needs to be done as far as the methodology of the studies, and I need to validate that part as a research student, as an academician. Validation would come mainly from your data because I have studied your system as an industry, whichever company or whichever process they are trying to study. Typically, many of the times it so happens that the industry says that I cannot share my data because of ABC confidential reason, B reason, C reason, D reason. So what it lands up at the end of the day is I have done a work as a PhD student, say, I've done a lot of work. I've put in so much effort to understand the system, think about how can I better perform the system, how can I improve the present system in digital era with various kinds of technology involved. And this kind of problem is not new to the digital era. So this was itself the problem which was there previously. Only maybe VUCAs have further, I'll say, increase the variability and uncertainty associated to it with all the other factors of volatility and all. Till I get the data as indicated by a couple of our academic colleagues, I'll not be able to publish because I cannot do the analysis. So without the data, if I send it to a journal, the journal says, sorry, the validity is not there. You have only proposed something, but without any validity. So thereby, maybe if I put up, then academicians are looking at, or the research community is looking at, if industry, as Professor Prashant said, you can highlight the problem, the research community will work at it, but then the data, if you can share it to some extent, right? Even a sample representative of the data, that will help a long way in validating whatever he's trying to propose. As Siddharth said, next 2-3 years, you should do like this. In next 5 years, you should go in this direction. Till I'm able to validate my model, again, the KPIs do not match. You want a KPI, the academicians want another KPI, and till our objectives go on match, so I will not do my research with your problem anymore. So all these gaps will further just go on increasing. So it would be nice if research community could understand their problem. That is one. On the other hand, to make it more relevant to their KPIs of publications, even if you can share some amount of data, real data, so that I can test that this is the output, is that the output what you are getting on the ground? If that is the thing, then if I want to improve the system, somewhere in the processes I might have to change, maybe somewhere technologies can get involved. So that's where the imaginative process starts doing for a research community. And thereby the output of it could be more relevant to the industry context, because the problem was from the industry, the data is from the industry, and that makes more a sync between both academic and research community. I thought I'll just wind up that point of the discussion before, if we get time, we'll definitely come back. Let me go to the second agenda of the discussion, which is primarily looking at how do I...
Professor Rupesh, so, sorry if I can interrupt you,
Yeah.
just a few seconds. I think you have given a really important thing, because most of the industries, they say, okay, we don't want to share our data, right? Because, I think one thing that people have to jointly work towards is how to camouflage that data, right? There are different ways of, modifying the data so that the identity of the industry or whatever that's not revealed but the insight still remains.
Yeah.
So as long as, and there are enough instruments like NDAs and all that, I think that's how things have to go, so that we are together going towards a better direction. Yeah, I thought this just sorry for that.
That's what I wanted to convey, that some kind of data, and then we can work around with that.
Right.
Okay.
Sure.
So next part of it is, let me go to the second part of academic and also as an interest to the industry, because industry being one of the major recruiters for every institutes or management institutes including. So I'm again looking at the curriculum design side of it. Some of those aspects of curriculum designs have been spoken about by from the industry and also from the academician and also. But just to get a sense of it, now, what kind of curriculum design would you like to see as a change from industry perspective? That these are things which should go out, and these are the new things which should definitely get into the schedule, the course curriculum across multiple verticals, as it was indicated that there is no longer called as only operation study, because the system has now integrated. The vertical silos have already broken. The silos was made for administrative advantage. But somehow or other, the mindset was there that we are only going to run as a silo, never the industry work runs as a silo. So what kind of schedule changes would you like to have or upgrade so that we are more successful in a digital era? Our students who go out to industry starts also better appreciating compared to the present scenario. I don't say they don't appreciate the present scenario, but they can be more industry relevant, so that the effort which the industry makes to get them priority or the need of the industry, that can be reduced. So from 6 month effort, it can be reduced to 3 months. That's also fine. Great starting. So what kind of curriculum design would industry like to have at the academic side? It could also link to graduation level if you're looking, because in most of the management schools, the inputs are also coming from graduation levels. So a lot of assumptions are there that these are the things which you have already done. It includes some aspects of mindsets. So I'll leave it to industry right now. So I'll go back to Deepak ji. Deepak ji,
so I just have a clarificatory point. When you say curriculum, basically you mean the syllabus, which is there.
Designs.
Okay, because right. Because I have been a part of a couple of syllabus design committees, which again do invite industry people. So I will just use that perspective as well. But first, let me.
Maybe we have lost you. If by the time so Deepak comes back,
researcher, faculty.
Just last few seconds we could not capture. It was stagnant at your end.
Okay, I think I will come closer to the mic. Am I audible now?
Your screen was hung. So once again, you joined back just now.
Okay, fine. I think there is some connectivity. Okay, so I'll just repeat what I wanted to do was to connect the first issue which we just concluded to the second which we have raised regarding the curriculum or the syllabus. And I was just going back to a point which Mr. Ajit made, a very useful one. He divided the academic community into two. One is the student community, which has a sort of very aligned objective because they do want to jump into the industry and they do want to do very practical problem solving, versus the researcher faculty objective, which is basically publishing or so on and so forth. So let me just start with my couple of examples that with the curriculum or syllabus which you have and with the students who really want to use it to solve industry problem, what is the result you get? Because I have given a lot of projects to a lot of MBA students and have tried to use their output, but just see what kind of output comes. So I gave a very simple problem to a very, you can say, not such a high-end MBA institute who actually wanted to just apply what he learned in his basic operations course in first semester. So I said, okay, I'll give you all the data, which is the problem data not available. I said, just tell me what is the EOQ with which I should buy milk every day at my household. Okay, so I give you all ordering cost, holding cost, everything. And he did. And he said, sir, you should buy 763.28 ml of milk every day. Okay, now what do I do with that answer? But that is the answer his academics teaches him to give me. Okay, so that is the gap which is there in your curriculum. So I'm not saying curriculum is wrong or the theory is wrong, but the theory is producing answers which are not possible to use in practice. So this was a more abstract. The other is a real 2-month summer internship project given to a very high-end management institute students to do a warehouse location problem. So he collected huge amount of data, demand data, where the demand is X and Y, Z coordinates of XY coordinate of 200 demand points, 5 supply points, everything, took a big map, drew a lot of things and applied a lot of modeling. Is it I use center of gravity, whatnot. And in the end, he came and presented it literally, saying that based on all this, it was a half-an-hour presentation. These are the XY coordinates of the ideal warehouse location. That was the answer. So I said, okay, you are giving XY coordinate, but where is it? Let us put up a map and see where those lie. And it was a project based on Mumbai city, and the XY coordinates were in the center of the Powai Lake. Okay, so now again, what do I do with that? So this is the kind of gap which comes out. So the theory is perfectly correct. The practice is a practical problem. Now the answers which come from theory are theoretically correct, but not practically feasible. So as I said, one of the big problem in your language, I would say, we have to bridge this optimality and feasibility gap, because the academics is too focused on optimality. Industry wants feasibility. So what I used to tell students is, give me the least suboptimal feasible solution. Don't give me the optimal solution, because I can't do anything with that. And then you have to apply a combination of techniques which are much more practical to reach it. So that is in fact one of the challenges which is there. So as I said, I just wanted to use these 2 anecdotes to illustrate the issue which results in the gap. Now coming to the second point which you have raised, that what way the syllabus should be changed. Now I have a slightly radical view. So I would have a counter question, that why should you have a syllabus? Okay, by that what I mean is I'm giving some real data. I had an operation management class which I gave a lecture. This is the real data. 20% non-engineer freshers, 30% engineer freshers, 10% non-engineer experienced people, 40% experienced engineers, experience being 1 to 5 years. Now you say I have a syllabus. All of you have to study the same thing in the same way for the same amount of time. Is it correct for such a diverse class? And end of it, what you say, I have brought you all to one level, which is very unfair to that engineer who had a 5 years of experience, who has been brought to a level which a fresher non-engineer has been brought to. Because in those number of hours, he could have gone far ahead. So we are imposing a syllabus by saying that a diverse class should learn the same things in the same way and for the same time and reach the same level. So that is a problem of a tyranny of syllabus. And I think the new education policy talks about encouraging critical thinking. The problem is when a student starts thinking critically, the questions he starts asking are out of syllabus. And then as a faculty, you have to say, no, this is not in the syllabus. This will come in second year. This will come in some elective. And you reject that question while it is very relevant because it has cropped up when you are teaching something maybe very basic. So I think we have to really break this problem. So one of the thoughts which I had is, because when I talk to academicians, they say, yes, we have this syllabus. We have 15-hour 1 credit course, 30-hour 2 credit course, 45-hour 3 credit course, and so on. So I say, fine, you keep your structure that way. But if you are saying there is a 30-hour course, then why don't you give inputs of 60 hours and let the student take the 30 hours which are relevant to them? Because some guy who's an engineer, he may skip the first 10 hours and go to the last 30 hours. Some guy who's a fresher non-engineer, he may take the first 30 years and ignore the last 30 hours. So the diversity of students demands diversity of teaching, and it is paired with the diversity of jobs which the industry has to offer. Like we don't have standard job. We need everybody. We need a fresh BCom who has studied 2-year MBA and we have a role for him. We need a 5-year experienced engineer who has studied operations and we have a role for him. Of course, at a different level, at a different salary and a different one. But we have to maintain this diversity throughout. So my submission is that first you do away with syllabus before you think of what should be in it and what should be outside it. So I know it's a very radical idea. So I let it sink in and maybe come back, but let others have their say. Okay.
Thank you, Deepak. So we move on to Ajit. Ajit, over to you, please.
Yeah. See, one of my observations is when I come to industry or when I work with industry, the first thing is, you cannot deny ambiguity. And the problem I see is a lot of times people try to box that ambiguity. I mean, I give a very simple example. If we have to construct a road in Mumbai, and typically the municipal corporation or whoever will say this road has to be constructed in 2 years, otherwise there is a penalty. So somebody is estimating that, etc. Right? Now, what happens in reality? In reality, the people who work on the construction, the kamatis as we call them, you will realize that the same kamati does not come every day. You don't even know who comes, right? He or she may be unwell, they may not come, they may go to their native place, they may not come. So that is an ambiguity. If it rains in Mumbai, everything stops. So that is an ambiguity. If there is a strike or prices of cement go up, people will try to delay the procurement. So that is an ambiguity. So what I feel is one of the basic things is the ability to deal with ambiguity and not try to avoid ambiguity in our estimation or our models, because that is what makes the solution impractical. If I remove all these ambiguities, I know exactly when I will build the road. But if I add these ambiguities, and I am sure there will be many more, and to what Deepak said, I agree. Lot of times I am feeling that the solution which comes out has to be validated for practicality, because after doing all of this, I come with a very good answer, but it is right in the middle of the ocean, then I think it is of no value. So I think what I would say is, in addition to changing the syllabus, I think there has to be a behavioral change in how we try and do our exercises or our assignments. Or I think the more ambiguity we include, I think our output will be more mature. In general, I think today, to keep the curriculum interesting, a lot of topics which come to my mind are what I would call genealogy. Everybody wants to know, if I sell a car, I want to know where the brake came from, where the pads came from, where the tires came from, so that when there is a problem, I will be able to go back and say, oh, okay, this is where the problem is. I think this is an interesting thing in everything. You buy a food product, you may want to know where the milk came from, where the ingredients came from, because if something goes wrong, you want to trace back to where it went wrong. There are other topics which are of interest. For example, waste management. Normally, this is not a very widely thought about subject, but if waste management is improved by maybe a few percentage points, I think it will benefit everybody. I mean, if you look at metallic waste and non-metallic waste, if, for example, non-metallic waste, if you are able to bio-recycle or biodegrade it, I think it will be an interesting thing. The point which Professor Prashant made about data, I come to that saying, industry in general would not like to part with the data which is core to their business. So it's like, if somebody asks me my horoscope, maybe I will not give you. If somebody asks me my grocery list, maybe I will give you, right? As long as you add value to it. So I think there are a lot of topics, like, for example, safety on the plant, sustainability, waste management. I think there will be higher probability that you will get data. There may be a chance that there is no data, but I think if I were to say, okay, I'm manufacturing a car and I am also giving you data about the safety on the plant, the probability of giving the data about the car, I think, would be lesser, because there is a lot of IP, and it is also an apprehension that data may be misused, or it could leak somewhere else. But if you look at data for peripheral things, I think that would be more amenable to be parted with responsible academia. I think that would be my view.
I put out my comment at the end.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So, Baba sir, your views?
Yes, sir. I have, as a matter of fact, I would like to say that this summer internship, which is about 6 to 8 weeks, is not really bearing fruits for these students, because by the time required to learn the basic requirement of the industry or the job or the company where they're working, this time is not enough. As a matter of fact, a short period of the, maybe 1.5 semester could be devoted to theoretical, preparing the student theoretically, and rest of the time it should be that they will be working on internship, and that then only it can be more suitable or more fruitful. When you combine this semesters and try to give in whatever inputs are there's some of the institutes are already having a sandwich type of course in which major portion of the time is being given for internship, and when they come back, then those things whatever they have learned over there can be polished. The second thing is that the management education gives only a theoretical perspective. The researcher or the educationist view may not be clearly understood till the time it is experienced firsthand by the students. And this is where the internship will help. Secondly, I want to say is that the focus of the curriculum should be on 4O, so that people are ready with a lot of skills rather than theoretical knowledge, which is more of information orientation. People carry a lot of information. Now that information has to be converted into skills so that they can solve traditional problems or whatever the problems industries are facing. So skill-based knowledge, assimilation and evaluation is required. Our methods of teaching are still very age-old, and they are slightly a mismatch between the requirement of the industry as of now. To conclude, I will say that the curriculum still is focused on preset information, data or tools rather than problem solving. We do not want people who come here to study the problem. We want people to solve the problem. Industry is not looking out for anyone who is studying the problem. Studying the problem does not help the industry. Solving the problem may and will help the industry. So in new age of business, the type of challenges which we are facing, they have to be studied, and we do not want what are the problems and defining and they have to be solved, studied and solved. Thus, the capability to work with ambiguity, uncertainty, and problem-solving skills are hugely valuable. Our curriculum should work in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So now I'll move on to the academician side of it. So you can before moving on, I was still looking at the aspects from the industry. Do you expect the academicians to think about what are the things which the current batch of students are missing, which almost all the courses should be looked at, whether you're talking about only theory mode or a hybrid mode of internship plus theory, all those aspects. So do you feel there are some specific tools, technologies, knowledge input the present lot of students are missing, which tomorrow if we can better train the faculty or the faculty starts adopting it, could benefit downstream to the students? So again, this is the same part, so that we can look at what kind of digital gap is still there between the students whom you might be getting in last 1-2 years vis-a-vis the requirement at your in the industry required stage. Yeah, Deepak, just for one minute or so, 1-2 minutes, just so that we can have an idea about digital aspects of it being covered when we are talking about next 5-10 years being digital. You are on mute. You are on mute.
Yeah, sorry, I hope I'm audible now.
Yeah.
Okay, so as I mentioned, when we talk about anything digital or technology in general, I think we are all aware of the famous Moore's law. Every 18 months, things change. And every 2 years, an MBA comes out. So basically, what we are saying is that it is inevitable that there will be a gap, because even when we talk about curriculum and all, there is a gap between designing a curriculum and then implementing a curriculum. And then by the time that curriculum is taught and students come out, things would have definitely changed. So I think in the current speed at which the world is moving, I don't think we should worry so much about what the student has learned and what the industry is doing, because there will be a gap. What we have to be more worried about how quickly a student can adapt to where the industry is when he comes out. So that's why I already say that the most important thing to teach to a student is learnability, not some knowledge, because knowledge is static, knowledge gets obsolete, and knowledge will change very, very fast. And as Mr. Bhawa said, if you have a lot of information, it doesn't help, because today we have Google. So we are still having syllabus which was in pre-Google era, while the students are in the Google era. So there's no point in knowing a lot of things, because those can always be done. In fact, another thing which I would recommend all management institutes to do is every exam should be open book. I mean, why should you make a student not refer something when in the industry every problem is solved open book? Industry doesn't tell you don't go to the library, don't go to the internet, don't talk to your professor, don't talk to XYZ. He has access to everything in the industry, and yet problems don't get solved. While in the exam you say don't cheat, don't talk to your colleague, don't do this. I think everything should be allowed. Let him talk to his friend, let him talk to his professors. But the exam should be said that it tests the ability to solve a problem, because industry doesn't restrict you anything, and yet the problems are there. So these are really the changes to be done. But to answer your question in very brief, I mean, the gap between where industry is and where the academic is will remain because of this fast-paced change of nature. So only thing we have to teach the student is how quickly, when they join the industry, how quickly they can catch up. If that they know, then I think it's fair enough. I mean, that is a brief answer to your question.
Thank you.
We can always come back for any clarification.
Ajit ji, your views on 1 minute or so?
Yeah, I would say a lot of times I've seen people talk about technology and data. I will make one point, and the business value of data is what should be the focus. So, for example, it is not important to find the average of 1,000 records. I should know that this represents, let's say, the height of the person. So once you know, and you know that what is the value of that data, I think you will validate your own output. A lot of times infeasible outputs come because we just treat data like any other data. You multiply, add, subtract, but a lot of times in real life you cannot. So this is one point I would like to add, that a lot of times I've seen data and analytics. Industry doesn't actually need data and analytics. What they need is the value that will come to them from that data. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very important, crucial point. So, Bhawa sir, anything from your end?
No, I think I have already covered in this one that we are looking out for more skill orientation rather than information and knowledge orientation.
Yes.
As it has been said, for information we have Google. So we are looking out for those people who can solve the problem. So they should be looking out for problem solving technique. As a matter of fact, if there is an MBA who may not know his subject, but if he can come and study my problem and solve the problem, to solve my problem, whatever I'm facing, by whatever method he uses, I think he's more valuable to me. Because if we are suffering from a problem, any amount of information we have about the problem will not help me. But if you solve it, this is what I'm looking out for in the industry.
Thank you, sir. So now I'll move on to the academic community. You can get a feel of what industry looks for from our potential students, graduate students. So what would you like to have as a support from the industry, so that maybe the curriculum or syllabus with industry plus something on theory gets more relevant to our students and make them more industry ready? Yeah, I'll go back to Professor Prashant.
So that was a really wonderful synopsis of expectations that the industry has of the academic community and the students that are groomed by the academic community. So as a support, what I would, and I do agree with what most of the the speakers have been saying, especially what Mr. Ajit was saying, right? Because the data, if it is core to the competence of the organization, they're not going to share it. I very much appreciate with that. And at the same time, I think the industry is, we as academicians should also appreciate that the industry doesn't expect the new fresher or newcomer to directly be put into the core competency, right? Because they know that when this data is never revealed, no idea the world has of this data or the way that they are operating in their core domains, they don't expect the new product to be directly put there and perform from day one. So definitely we have to start scratching the slate from the peripheral and the contemporary issues. Yeah, I mean sustainability, because all these peripheral issues as well, right? Though the core competency is giving value to the organization, so do the peripheral issues as well, right? It may not be a it may not be a directly monetary contribution. Say, for example, I leave the effluents without treating into the canal or whatever. I mean, if you find a person who is trying to carefully, who is adept, a new manager who is adept at solving that problem, it may not be giving me so much money that I will get by selling my car, right? But it will help me in other ways, right? That itself is a value add to the organization. I mean, I will be able to, yeah, I'm green, right? Definitely, I'm not polluting the environment. I mean, it'll be helpful to adhere to the governmental regulations. I'm doing CSR kind of a stuff. Maybe I could do the byproduct, I could sell it somewhere or give it for free for needy and so on, right? So there are many peripheral issues that are there. And I think one mentality that even our students may have is they say, oh, okay, I'm going to work, do internship at Ford, so I have to start talking about the IC or the combustion engine or the supply chain that they have with their upstream suppliers. No, I mean, that I think is a far-fetched and too ambitious and unrealizable objective. So definitely, I'll be happy if I can get in touch with. So first of all, let me tell you my experience. What I found lacking, right, in my 3 years of academic career, what I found lacking is a common platform or a liaison between academic and an industry expert. Suppose I want to work in food industry or food supply chains and the problems that food supply chains are facing, or agricultural supply chains, or sustainability. I don't know who I have to go and talk to. Okay, that is one major drawback I find. I mean, I keep interacting with my colleagues, so when I start the day, I am in my office and I have the few set of people who I can interact with. So I think academic institutions should have a formal. So it could be as simple as a simple database, shared database among IIMs and IITs or whatever it is, right? So where we have industrial experts or some contacts so that we can approach them and get in touch with them. Okay. So now, before today or before the flyer came out, I don't know who Mr. Ajit was. I don't know who Mr. Baba was. I don't know who Mr. Deepak was. And so I don't know these people. Now I know them, right? Say, for example, and they know me as well. So this has acted as a platform for mutual gaining acquaintance, right? So, but this is informal. As many of you, Professor Pati was saying, maybe 58 people or 68 people would have registered, and then, like, due to various reasons, some people drop out, some people cannot register. So there are a lot of issues, right? It's just an ad hoc event. So there should be more formalized approach where we can talk to specific contacts. I mean, it's just a tea table side conversation. I just want to talk, like, have a open meeting. I want to start off with, usually I start off with, what are the problems that you're facing when you're operating on a day-to-day basis, right? That's what I want to know. Because as a researcher, as a management researcher, that's what I'm inclined. So having a formal or a more organized, I would say, way of interaction between industry and academics is what matters, because students keep changing. Every year you have new students coming. So that is a moving pool. So the real link should be between the academician or the institute, and in fact, it should be the academician, right? Because the academicians also keep moving across institutes, and the industry experts, because they also keep moving across organizations and so on. So this is what I found is lacking a lot. So, I mean, based on that, what I do is I look at secondary data. I look at databases from the governmental websites, look at databases from, I mean, prescribed or subscribed databases and so on. And whenever I meet people like in some fora like this, I just go and individually I talk to them. But of course, thanks to COVID, no personal tea sides and all that, like I cannot talk. So in fact, I should tell you, I had three or two industry projects that were about to take off. One was with Mysore Sandal Soap, and other was with some food catering organization. I don't know how many of you know Indira canteens, these government-run canteens, and so on. But that was about to take off, and then March there was COVID, and then everyone went into their dens, and then we are happy sipping our coffees. So, I mean, yeah, things would have been easier if there were more electronic or more organized. That's what I feel. I don't know who should take ownership of this, but I think collectively we should think of something which will help all of us in the long run. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Professor Niranjan, your views?
Yeah, thanks, Prashant. That was an excellent, some specific pointers also. Maybe POMS India can serve as that electronic platform to connect the industry problems. And
could be, yeah, great.
So I'm just mulling over one radical idea we heard of, doing away with the syllabus. Potentially, it's food for thought. The current wisdom of business schools is to have diversity. In fact, one thing that we miss in IIT Bombay is all the MBAs are engineers, 100% by design. The IIMs, whether they like it or not, unless they do something proactive, they'll get 90% of engineers. So my experience as both a faculty and a student is having a fresher with BCom from SRCC or St. Stephen and having engineers from IIT to the tier 2 cities and tier 3 cities is a terrific idea, because even a fresher can come up with a perspective that somebody who's been in automobile industry for 5 years has lost. People with experience come with that mindset, whereas a fresh kid fresh out of college can ask really perspective questions. So how I would see the way forward, which is mostly what we are already currently doing, is what we teach as the core concepts. These are something that every business school graduate needs to know, because only then when they enter the workforce, they will have common terms and terminologies with which, there are people graduating from different business schools. You should at least know the industry parlance, the core concepts, which is something everyone needs to know. Then sure, fresh BCom and 5 years industry experience in the automotive industry will have different needs. The space for them to explore their interests is during the projects and internships. So that is like, if you think of a cake again, the core is the same. Everyone needs to know certain basic concepts, which I'm pretty sure you can't get it on Google. You need to sit through a rigorous MBA curriculum, and that will establish you as that is what makes you deserving of a management degree. It's not an apprenticeship, where you can. So my view is, there needs to be certain academic rigor for the person to receive a master's degree, and then surely the point is well taken. Maybe we need to enhance the scope of projects which are very personal in nature. And my last point is, I completely concede that the quality of internships is not up to what they're capable of, and that's something striking contrast I've seen in ETH and European business school culture and India is we are very good at solving problems, acing exams, but when it comes to projects, all the examples, funny examples that you gave, solutions that are optimal but not feasible. This is one thing I've seen. Some of the work ethos of European business schools or university system is they come up with the term projects, the semester research thesis that they write is of far better quality. This is a problem well taken. We are aware of it. We need to do something about it. Yeah, those are my thoughts. Over to you, Bhupesh.
Thank you, Professor Titi. Professor Siddharth?
Yeah. Cutting the long story short, there are few things that is very important. First one is competency and capability. When you say curriculum design, we say that what we exactly want. We want to improve the capability of a student or a competency of the student. Now, when you want to improve the capability of the student, then obviously there are a few things that's what they need to know. Now, competency, that's what they will gain when they start working. Because when they start working, they will start learning things and then they become a competent. Now, in the digital era, what I think as a course design, one thing is very important. That's what Mr. Baba mentioned, that the internship, the 2 months or 6 to 8 weeks. Why don't we have a hand holding of a student for a year and they when they interact with the industry, and then when they solve the problem, when they have a long-term project where the first 2 months they go for a project and then they write a thesis about the problem of the industry and then solve it for at least a semester or two. So they will need to write a project report, which is an extended report. Second point, very short, virtual factory. Now, if you don't, as it is like no form chapter, what do we say that virtual factory? Why, if people are not able to enter into an industry, then why don't you come up with why don't we institution provide them a virtual factory where they will able to know the problems and they will try to solve the problem for a longer period of time, right? And the third dimension, that is what in a curriculum design we can improve, like finishing schools. Like once they finish the school, like as a researcher, we also need to know the problems. We need to know that what are the data that is what is actually behaving differently, or there is a surprise element. Now, if our student going for a job and for next 1 year after the finishing school, the handholding will again continue for 1 year, then that is another approach through which we'll be able to know better about the industry. Rather, if we can provide this kind of facilities, then that will improve. And comms as a chapter, why don't we can have a database where like telemedicines? If I have a problem, if I know the resource person, I can call them over a Zoom meeting, because in the digital era it is easy. If I can come up with fix up with a time through WhatsApp, and then you can go for a Zoom meeting. Then when I say that, look, this is my problem, can you help me? So rather getting into the real data, we can have the data of experts through which we can even call them as a industry interaction say, or as a when we have a problem, then we can even reach out to them. That's it. With this, I think this is it.
Thank you very much. Now, maybe in the interest of the time, I'd like to just wind up this part of the discussion from my observation as well as interaction and inputs from all of you, all the expert panelists. So one thing I could see that industry wants students who can really solve their problem, and much more than that, they should be able to accept that this world is dynamic and they should have that problem solving skill set, understand about the VUCA world, what it's going through, and understand also that whatever technology today is there, tomorrow it can be obsolete. So chasing after only technology, by the time they are graduate, it would be obsolete altogether. And there is an important aspect to understand from, say, in our courses design, when we are interacting through multiple cases and all these things, we need to first of all stress upon the need for change. Is there a need now? If I'm already 99% taking a market share, why should I change? Because everyone is changing digital, because that's why we should also change digital. It makes no sense, right? Till I see there is a need to change. So those kind of fundamental questions, maybe every case, whatever it's taken in whichever course and syllabus, might have to be taken care. The other important aspect which I could see is industry trying to say, indicate that why not they do live project through internship extension, say through more number of live projects. And that's what was, I think, pointed it out by almost all the academic community, that if forms, that was another point of questions which I had, but as all of you have already pointed it out, it makes my job easier. So can academic communities like forms or platforms like forms provide that kind of an interaction platform where companies can say all 100 companies, 300 companies, 500 companies can say, okay, these are our contact points in the companies. On the other hand, all the institutes, not only IIMs, IITs, but other parts of the institutes of India as well as globally, they have their respective contact points, as well as the faculty know that, okay, I have a problem in food industry, I have a problem in pharmaceutical industry, and I would like to, as a student, I want my students to look at these aspects, let them go and interact with these individual resources where they can share their problems which they are facing. And once they are aware of the problem, then it makes more seem that, okay, in the next 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, it can continue, as Professor Siddharth was saying, why restrict to 2 months? Interaction with academic expert will be there in the next 1 year, and your faculties would also be there, not only in one domain, so that all the cross domains should be involved here. So you have all the resources of various faculties inputs available. You have experts there in the industry available who can be the mentor kind of thing. Maybe the platform could be institution like POMS, where if we can have such kind of an arrangement, then we can have both the aspects going together. Because it's very vital, according to me, that when I enter into an industry, if industry starts saying, say I'm using some kind of a capacity management bottleneck, and if you interact with many of the students in first year, half of them, they don't know what do you mean by bottleneck itself. I'm interacting with a very senior management executive program now. First day, it took me on digital transformation. It took me first day to understand, see, every time you don't have to transform, because 2000s also they had digital transformation, that digital technology was something else. Today's digital transformation, digital technology is something else. But if you look at the approach part of it, same. Yesterday's data analysis, because the power of computer was not there, was a little bit slower. Today you can do much more things faster. So unless and until the perception, even I'm putting it from the industry as well as students' perspective, perception that you need to know not only what the technology can play the game, but where all I can use these technologies. And as I indicated by many of the practitioners, say you took an example of EOQ, you took an example of waste management. I'll just share that. Typically saying you can have 3.2 kgs of rice, but you cannot have 3.2 kgs of vehicle, 3.2 numbers of vehicle. And in such a case, there are all these kinds of issues that when a contractor says, I can only give you in 5 batches. So then there are models which are there. But then maybe as an academic community, we need to make the students very much aware that of the base model, what are the assumptions? These assumptions are 99% wrong. Then your thumb has to be a little bit bigger in adjustment. If the assumptions are 99% right, then thumb has to be right, a little bit lesser. I generally tell to my even the executive participants, how can you all say 20% is the thumb rule for my boss? Thumb has to depend on the situation. There is nothing called as thumb rule of the organization, because all of us might work in different scenarios. So maybe in our approach, we need to be more practice oriented. That would make it more practice oriented, which will make their thinking process also a little bit broad. On the other hand, the platform, as suggested, could also provide the industry to have the students after 1.5 years or 1 year of doing live project across us at their pace, considering the basics of all the terminologies which are necessary to be in various kinds of review meetings or to enter into industry. They should not be confused what was this term. So theory plus basic theory is part of it, plus guided by case studies, which will give them different perspectives to think about, that it's not only optimization. There is no use of having optimization where market will run away. Because by the time you give me the optimal solution, customer has gone to competitor. So in the same way, by the time I give you optimal solution, your pressure or job is so high that you will finally land up in resigning the job, HR problem. So all these things cross vertical, I'll say, silo interactive sessions might have to be very important when we talk even about our operations students. Your job is not solely productivity. Your job is not only this part. You might also have to take care of that your team members should not leave you. So how do I take care of my team? How do I take care of my market so that our organization does not face any problem in the long run? So unless and until it has to be a two-side game, both the parties, from industry as well as academia, they move one step forward, could be through a platform, as I indicated, could play a very vital role if you really want our students to go out there who are much better prepared for the industry as compared to the current scenarios. Maybe just to, I'll say insight, as I think one of the panelists said about waste management. I had one student, she was doing on pharmaceutical waste. So I said, okay, let us go out together, because India has 40% of the people who are dying, 25-30% of the people who die because of lack of medicine, and we throw away 40 medicine post expiry. Can we get some data about from various industries what is the waste generated in terms of expired medicine? Believe me, out of 25 organizations, none of them gave us. Because the moment I said, this is the waste, they said, right, I cannot quote the name of the organization. Many of them, they said, if I give you the waste, that means the end customer, and you publish tomorrow, right? End customer comes to know that this particular company's waste, 40% of production is going in waste. That means there is no sales. Automatically, they said, you can speculate whatever it is, but data don't ask me. Right? So saying it's not only the operational data you might not be sharing, but this side data also you might not be. So at the academic aspect, it might be really helpful for our students who do these life kind of projects also, that you can just hide those data in terms of changing the names, changing the parameters, as Professor Prashant was mentioning in the previous session. So there are multiple ways in which the secrecy of the data could still be there, and understanding or learning from the students would still be there. I do appreciate that the role of POMS or similar kind of organization in various kinds of sectors play a very vital platform. Maybe let us see if POMS can come up with such kind of scenarios where we provide such kind of platforms, but then we definitely appreciate the industry to have a contact point to whom the faculty can, or the student under the faculty can approach. Industry community also, it makes a two-way learning, and I think it really develops a faculty also over a period of time, because it starts working in n number of industries, and that takes it directly to the class also, the real live example, rather than just saying some theoretical numbers or theoretical data. So maybe I'll just put up, I noted down some points as a concluding remark, and before that, maybe a couple of queries are there. I'll just take up those queries, then we'll put up. Conclude. This is to Professor Siddharth as well as Professor Niranjan, those who have done even, both of you have done outside India, the studies. So how the syllabus design and industry interaction, how is the syllabus design and industry interaction? Are they similar to Indian top schools or different? Setting up of labs, is it with the partnership of industry, or is it with the institute itself, considering the constraint which we have at the financial capacities level? Collaboration of project, I think we have talked about. So mainly I'll say these two important aspects that are looking at: foreign versus Indian syllabus curriculum designs, and the facilitation of setting up of labs. So Niranjan and Siddharth can take it up, because both of you are coming from the same place.
Yeah, first important point is there's no such thing as foreign versus India, because foreign is extremely heterogeneous. Europe is not same as the US, and the US and maybe Singapore culture, academic cultures are very different. I'm a bit familiar with the European system, where in the B schools as well as in the regular university, a lot of projects, a lot of PhD projects are industry sponsored. The funding itself comes from the agency. All said and done, now we have 3 academicians from with different backgrounds. Prashant knows more about the US system. It's extremely industry relevant, but at the same time, in terms of pedigree, the US PhD is considered, is valued much more in the academic world, because it's rigorous. It runs 4 to 5 years, whereas a typical industry sponsored European PhD would finish in 3 years. So the academic rigor may be that's the trade-off. When it comes to setting up of labs, a little bit I know about the IIT system. It's pretty good, actually. I know there are a couple of industry sponsored or alumni sponsored. Alumni actually represent the industry. They represent the sector from where they have made their name. I can think of at least 3-4 research centers or labs that have come up that are industry sponsored, mostly in finance and innovation. Likewise, there are centers of excellence in most of the IIMs, which are partially industry sponsored, I suppose. So that's my view. Paddy, over to you.
See, on the same line, I just want to just point out a few things. One is the master's thesis. That is what is important, because in the MBA program, the second year generally, along with the subject, to come up with a master thesis. And generally, a postdoc or a professor, assistant professor, is to mentor them for a thesis work. That is what is missing over here, specific to IIM system. And secondly, setting up of labs. Like there are few labs in management discipline, not like workshops, like in this typical engineering system. Generally, behavioral lab, financial lab, trading lab. Then you need to have a Bloomberg and Thomson and Reuters and Center for Monitoring Indian Economy databases. So these are the database which is required, because as Professor Prashant mentioned, that some of the time it is very difficult to get the data from the industry. Obviously, industry have their own issues. They don't want to give the data. So obviously, you need to get the data from somewhere. That is where your Bloomberg and this TR Thomson and Reuters and these databases really help. Apart from that, like you need to have a project management and simulation lab, which is also important, which is you'll find, and risk management or entrepreneurship lab. So which is also important, what we observed outside, and also in majority of the IITs and IIMs, they have also started having those labs. So that is what I think more important,
to have anything to add, because I think it was mentioned something about US academic part of it. So anything new to add from your observations? Yeah, you are now you are on mute.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I think so. I was more talking in terms of MBA graduates more than PhD graduates. Of course, PhD graduates, we were asked to go to industry and do internships and all, but they are still competitive as well. So just being a PhD doesn't entitle that we get an internship for sure. And at the same time, we also want to choose what kind of internship, what kind of organization we want to go, and so on. So some people could do it in their second year, some could do it in their third year, and some people didn't do it as also. Okay. So for example, in my case, I didn't do internship per se, but I had enough work-ex that helped me to at least relate to what's going on in an organization and quickly connect my classwork to a company and so on, right? And of course, as I kept doing my research, I have been reading a lot about various non-academic pieces of articles, like be it something about an company, something about an industry, and so on, which are other ways that can help. But all said and done, they won't give you they won't take you so much as you get into an internship. Okay. The other thing could be for MBAs, what they do is they are forced to go and do internship at different organizations. And in my year, it was bad actually. And then people did it for free as well, right? Or even a very low pay. And that too in the Bay Area, and which are the costly parts of the US, right? So, I mean, that there is a impetus or there is a force from the academic institution saying that you have to go somehow do something. Let it be a startup, that's okay. But still, in fact, it could be a better thing to do for a startup, because nothing is organized, right? You have to sit there and get your hands dirty. So I think that is there. That should be there. Yeah. I mean, we have such kind of legacy and philosophy in top business schools in India. And of course, the engineering schools, especially when it comes to operations management, big data, and these kind of solving problems. I think IITs will have a better pitch for their students. That's what I think. Yeah, I think we have to just foster it. And one thing that I realized is if there is a project, okay, some person X from the organization and someone from the IIM or IIT or the institute, they come together, and then the student is the liaison or the harbinger between the two, and then that's it, these two guys separate. So I think that we have to have a longer interaction, and then I think, yeah, it comes to interpersonal as well. So we can't say much about it, you can't formalize it, but I think we should actively pursue that kind of relationships.
Thank you. It was really an interactive discussion with the esteemed panelists. If any of the industry practitioners would also like to put up a passing comment before I conclude the session, please feel free.
Yes, I would like to say something.
Yes, sir.
You know, in my one of the comments, I said that number of people who are opting for operations are very few. And I was trying to find out why it is. And then Mr. Niranjan has helped me in trying to find out the reason. He said he has enough number of people who are practicing operational management, and most of them are engineers. All his students are engineers, and the confidence level of the engineers in going for, because those people who come for MBA, they keep on asking questions. Sir, can I take this subject? I'm not an engineer. Will I get a job? Will I be successful? So the reason why there are so many people in IIT who are going for operations is, one reason is that they are 100% engineers. Whereas in rest of the MBAs which you come, you'll find only 4 or 5 students are engineers who could not get a job as an engineer outside. So they thought in the meantime, yes, a lot of people have different objective for doing MBA. If I talk to some of the girls, why you are doing MBA? He said, यदि मैं MBA नहीं करूँगी तो my mother will get me married. So I don't want to get married. Some people do MBA because they will be in a position, their position in matrimonial, this thing will improve. So they are doing MBA for that reason. MBA has various, attractions for people. And, the boy has nothing doing. He just said, why you are doing MBA? He said, I have to ultimately go and sit with my father and look after his business. So my father said, go and enjoy your life in Bombay. So what to do? So we are looking out for a college which also has hostel accommodation. And that's why I'm in this college and doing MBA. And later on, in any case, I have to go and sit with him in the shop. So MBA has various objectives. Those who want to make a career, and if they have to take operations, as I said, most of the other people who are not coming with the engineering background are very reluctant and scared to take operations. That is the reason why number of people who I find in the class are 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10. Not 2 batches of operations. That is the luxury which the IIT Bombay is enjoying. Not everybody is so lucky.
Completely agree, sir. Yeah.
Agreed, sir. So, Ajit, any parting comments?
Yeah, one point I would like to propose is, the topic about labs. And I think it is important to create lab environments, and lab is not just infrastructure. It will require tools. It will require interaction with the industry. It will require maybe interaction even with the venture capitalist. So funding is an important part of the lab. But I think it will be interesting if, let's say one institute, let's say IIM Kozhikode becomes the data lab of India, or, some other IIM or some other IIT becomes like the genealogy lab of India. Because I think if I look at data, everybody is now generating data. You do something on Google, there is data. The data is again backed up, so more data. The backup data is again stored somewhere else, further more data, right? So I think if you have a data lab which looks at structured data, unstructured data, there are some fundamental problems. A, cleaning the data. B, linking the data. And no matter which industry you are, I think this is going to be very, very important. A lot of people say data is the new whatever asset for any industry. But I think if you look at it, it is not about Oracle. It is not about SQL. It is about the business value of that data. And I would like maybe somebody to say, okay, we will set up the data lab. I think it will be an interesting ground for everybody. It will also attract the industry to that institute.
So a wonderful point, well taken, well appreciated, because such labs are very rare in India. Thank you. So, Mr. Deepak?
Actually, again, if we talk about the lab part, I think the best laboratory is industry. So when you're talking about teaching people, let us say, I think we talked about, say, a trading lab. So actually having a Bloomberg terminal or something in your MBA institute, instead of that, it is better the student goes to a trading house and sits with a trader and just acts like a fly on the wall. I mean, he may not do anything, but so that's why my view is that lab should be not in the institutes. For MBAs, at least the lab should be the industry. And again, the issue is how do you get access to it? Why should industry give access to you? Those are the issues which we have to tackle, rather than again isolate the student and saying you learn also at the institute and lab will also at the institute. So more and more you isolate the academia and the industry. So in fact, labs are a wonderful way to increase the interaction by saying, go out there, your factory is the lab. So if you are studying operations, factory is the lab, warehouse is the lab, and go in the field, that is the best laboratory. Don't be here. So that is a sort of, again, alternate view on labs from my side.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was really interesting interaction for around 2 hours, and we are very close to our timeline as such. So we will not further delay. Many of you have your commitments also. Thank you once again. And really the inputs
Can I make one last comment? Can I make one last comment?
Yes, sir.
Only one liner, not much.
Yes, sir.
Industry is the customer for the product which is being produced in the colleges, in MBA colleges. So these products have to be customized as per the needs of the industry.
Absolutely. So maybe that's what I was looking at it, that when we are looking at our students as an input, I'll say in a very harsh term, it's an input raw material for the industry. Now, the better you have the inputs, the outputs will be very good for the industry, right? The productivity and all these things. Now, to make the input raw material better, it's quite possible that industry has to come into the academic somewhere, maybe through various training programs, so that the faculty or the research community, depending on the target which you have, they should be aware that this is what is happening today. So maybe you start adjusting in this every alternate year, different industries. That can again act as a catalyst for a faculty to start thinking that, yes, see, I saw it there is something else happening, which in the literature it's not coming out because it will take years and decades to come out. So if industry can also take that lead where they can hold some training sessions from practitioners' perspective, automatically when an academician comes back here, back to the institution, his thinking approach, it's quite likely that 40% of academicians' thinking approach might change. Maybe again, I'll say, forms or such kind of academic body could be a platform who can instigate such kind of interaction. And on that note, I would like to thank each and every one of you for sparing your valuable time. 2 hours is a very long time, especially digital world when all of you are throughout the day in digital medium. Thank you once again. It was wonderful interacting. And thank you all the audience. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.